Hi everyone, it's great to see you all. I kind of feel like it's a bit of a reunion today to see you all here. And it's great to be able to present on what are the things that I get to see and enjoy when I go around and audit some of you people. So we'll cover off just a few things. What are the most common findings, as well as risks? Where are they? What are they? Some of the statistics, and they're not huge statistics thankfully, but what's happened in South Australia in the last few years. And also what does the future hold for us here in South Australia and the food industry in general. So when I get to go around and visit various dairy factories, I have the privilege of seeing some really fantastic systems, as well as some that are not so good and need a bit of a help, and some that have some gaps still to address. These are some of the things that I get to see that may be, a negative in a sense, but I'm putting them out there for you to have a look at and to take on board and use to improve your systems. So don't take this the wrong way. It's not me being a nag or anything like that. I'm raising this so that it's an opportunity for improvement for you. The main thing that I guess what I want to see when I go out is that your HACCP plans are actually effective. So HACCP is mandatory for everyone in the food industry, but I get to see some manufacturers that have really taken it on board and own their HACCP plan and have really reviewed it and assessed their risks, and are not just doing it to keep the regulators happy or to keep their third-party certification providers happy. They actually live, breathe and own their HACCP plans. So I guess that's really, if you're going to get anything out of my talk, is make your HACCP plan your Bible, because it's so important and it forms the basis of how you manage your risks and maintain that system of food safety. So, risk assessment process is poor. I get to see too many systems where there's been generally a very poor risk assessment process that's been undertaken. The people that have come up with a HACCP plan have really not assessed all the risks in the process. And unfortunately, I see too many HACCP plans that have actually been written just sitting at a desk. And that's really, really poor, because you can't possibly review and assess your risks if you're just sitting at a desk. You have to go out and see what's actually going on in the factory. And even if you're just a one-man band, an owner-operator, go out and spend the time actually looking to see where are really all the risks in your process. Foreign matter contamination. Oh my goodness, I have seen it all, I reckon, in my years of going into factories. So there's still way too many risks that exist with foreign matter contamination. So I mean, I've just put a few examples out there, but I've seen lots and lots of things, and things from tools to magazines, clothing, bits of plastic, all sorts of things can end up in factories that shouldn't be in there. So if they're in there and they don't have a purpose, please just get rid of them. I don't want to see them, and they're a risk to your product. So yeah, just random items, just move them somewhere else where they're not supposed to be. Insufficient resources. So a lot of you have undergone a lot of changes to your business and growth, and that's fantastic to see. That's what we want to see in the food industry, growth and people doing well. But along with that comes risks such as, you don't have enough resources, and resources can be anything from obviously people to equipment to anything, and just time. And all of those things can be obviously a risk to the finished product as well. And one thing I have to mention there is too many people rely on people like me to come along and find the gaps in their process. So please don't just rely on the regulators to be your internal audit function. You should be the ones that find the gaps in your process, not us. So in terms of insufficient resources, that rapid growth and expansion needs to be reviewed and assessed. Do you need to employ someone specifically for QA? Some businesses I've seen have really grown to the point where they just can't manage on their own anymore, and they need to have a specialist function in that area. And I know it's a bit of a chicken and the egg thing, like, are we big enough yet? I can't really afford to get someone, but I see them struggling with the responsibilities that it takes to manage food safety properly. So it's a very important part when you're in the food industry, and I see it a bit like an insurance policy, really, because none of us like to pay our premiums, but imagine if you didn't have insurance and something happened. It's a big risk. Preventative measures. What sort of preventative measures do you have in place to manage any sort of situations that, when things go pear-shaped? Inadequate verification. So people don't actually verify, is this the correct control for my process? And again, the resources bit, competency training of key staff. Are the people that actually manage food safety for you, have they been trained? Have you invested in their development and made sure that they actually know what they're doing? And that also includes not just the people responsible for QA, but all the operators. We've talked about a lot of those issues already with some of the previous speakers. How often do you do refresher training on your staff? Do they really understand their responsibilities with food safety? Okay, so what are some of the good things that I see? And I do see lots of good things, so I don't think I'm just all negative. The HACCP plan, I'm going to bang on about that again. A good HACCP plan has someone spent the time and effort and making sure that it's comprehensive and thorough, and it's got everything in there. You've considered all your risks. I've already talked about internal audits. You have your own excellent internal audit system. Don't rely on us to pick up the holes in your system. So internal audits and corrective action go together. If you've put the effort into finding where your gaps are in your process and in your system, then you're going to have a really good corrective action system to manage that as well. So I get to see some fantastic systems out there, and it's a joy and a pleasure to audit those places. Well-maintained premises. I mean, it's kind of obvious that you need to have a facility that is actually maintained. And with our weather patterns lately, I have actually seen quite a few leaking roofs and puddles in factories where there shouldn't be any. So it's been a good test, the weather, of how well some of our premises are maintained. And just to give an example, there was somewhere where I audited where the persistent rain actually caused a food safety issue inside the factory. So the leak in the roof, the water entered some primary packaging material, and when I came to audit this facility, the packaging was actually mouldy, and they hadn't realised it because it had been stored, in an area that not many people accessed. So yeah, it just brought to light the risks involved in having a poorly maintained facility. Excellent housekeeping. Again, another kind of no-brainer, but how many places really have excellent housekeeping? There's not very many that I go to. And, some people, they're in the same environment every day. They don't notice that, things are getting a bit, untidy. So make it, include it in your GMP housekeeping audits. Get someone from outside the area to come in and have a look and make sure that it's good. And competent and happy staff, you might think that that's a bit unusual, but when you go around and audit factories, you can actually pick up, the culture and the vibes, and you can notice when people are genuinely happy at what they're doing, and it makes such a difference. So just having, a great culture at work is so important, to look after your staff and to keep them motivated and happy. And along with that comes genuine management commitment and a food safety culture. So it's not just the people in QA or certain people in the factory that are responsible for that. It goes from the top down. Everybody is responsible for maintaining that food safety culture. Okay, so what are the risks in your business? Have you actually really thought about all the risks that exist with the products that you make, the suppliers that you use, the customers that you provide to, and the end stage consumer. There's lots of things to consider, and whilst, yes, it's covered in your HACCP plan, Sally talked about change, and I'll talk about that in a minute in a bit more detail, but all of these things change. We don't just keep making the same product forever and a day. So, you know, what about that piece of equipment that you only use once in a blue moon that kind of sits out the back in the shed, you know, sort of just protected by this little plastic sheet? I've seen those bits of kit around the place. What about, you know, the product they only make once a year, or the customer that has like just a special order once in a blue moon, or the supplier that you go to just very occasionally and they're kind of, you know, the alternative supplier and they've actually changed their supplier. So they're all things that you have to think about and assess as a risk. And it's those things that only happen occasionally, that are not standard, that end up being your biggest risk. So I'm just bringing those things out there so that you think about them. And the next slide is actually, I did this slide and I didn't include some of the examples I thought of afterwards. So I'm sorry, but some of the numbers are actually higher than what I've got in that slide. So in South Australia, since I've joined the Dairy Authority, we've had at least 10, 11, 12 probably that I've kept note of that have happened. So these are real life examples, and obviously I can't identify who's done what for confidentiality reasons. However, it just goes to show that we have had incidents. They have been serious. Some of them have been public recalls and some of them have not. Some of them have been product withdrawals. And all of these examples, the producers involved were shocked, very surprised, in some cases in despair. You know, I saw them crying. They couldn't believe that it happened to them, and they honestly thought that these things happened to someone else. Just like, you know, it is with other issues in life, no one ever thinks it's going to happen to them. They thought their systems and their products and their processes were safe and that they were immune to anything like this happening to them. So this included, you know, small producers, medium producers, and in some cases large companies. So there's a real mixture of who this affected. I'd say the majority of them came about through poor GMP and employees, basically the human factor. So I don't believe that any of them happened because procedures weren't followed. I do believe that in most cases it was the human element and people doing something that they shouldn't have. So with poor GMP, I mean as simple as people not washing their hands and a contamination happened. And in most of the examples, the bacteria, the pathogen, was found by the laboratory. So we found out about it at the finished product testing stage, which is unfortunate, obviously, because it's kind of too late by then and the product's already been produced and it's out there in the marketplace. So my point there is that the companies didn't have the ability to find those pathogens before the product was manufactured and released. So today's emphasis on environmental monitoring programs, most of those places that had these issues did not have an environmental monitoring program in place. There's an extra one in there which was an antibiotic positive, which doesn't happen very often, thankfully, but that also happened. So that was milk, and it did go to market, and the positive was detected after the product went to market. There was an extra E. coli in there, and there was an extra Listeria species in soft cheese as well. Okay, I've put this one in there because there's always new technology, there's always new things happening out there in the field of microbiology and in food production. So I don't know, Ed, if you've heard about this company or this method, but I heard about it recently. Sample 6 is an American company that's come up with a new enrichment-free diagnostic tool for detecting pathogens. So Listeria, they claim, can be detected in about 6 hours instead of days. So it's something out there. It's not available in Australia apparently yet, and I'm not sure about whether it's validated or anything like that. I'm just putting it out there that there's new technology, new methods that is going to be available in the next, currently now in America, but in Australia probably in the next few months, years, okay? We've also seen milk, and you've probably seen it in your local supermarket, claiming to be, raw milk, but it's actually cold pressed or high pressure produced milk. And that's something new, and it's an alternative treatment. Instead of pasteurisation, using heat to heat treat milk, it's using pressure. And pressure's been around for, high pressure, a long time in the food industry to make it safe. It's used in juices, jams, etc. It's now being used in milk. So it's something new that's out there for milk. We've heard about from other people that there's going to be, the future may be synthetically manufactured or 3D printed foods, which kind of sounds a bit bizarre and a bit franken-foody, but hey, they're making 3D body parts, why not food? With global food shortages, that's something that may be around the corner. What are some of our emerging trends? And I thought this was something important to talk about because the world we live in is changing. Change is our only constant, and what are causing all these weird things that we hear about in the press? What's happened? Why sprouts and rock melons and all these non-traditional foods that are now suddenly having food recalls, people getting sick, people dying from eating fruits and vegetables, or even low water activity foods such as flour. I don't know if you heard, there are all these people sickened in America from eating raw cookie dough. It must be an American thing, but still. They got E. coli from eating flour that was contaminated with E. coli.
We get salmonella in flour.
Okay, well, there you go. So, these things are all new, but they're happening. It's the world we live in now. So, why are some of these things happening? And I would suggest that the supply chain pressure is one thing. We're seeing climate change, mutating pathogens, but also increased transport. Demand for fresh and local food. It challenges our distribution systems because they're based on consolidation and centralisation and long shelf life. So all these constraints are changing the environment for our pathogens and what we eat and how we eat it. The people as well. How many have we heard about, that want and are demanding raw milk to be drunk? So our, social liberty demands. These people are saying we demand that we get these products and we're going to drink it and we're going to eat it. Doesn't matter what you government people say. Same thing with the, similar to the anti-vaccine movement. So more and more people are asking for these products to be provided to them because they perceive it to be healthier for whatever reason. More vulnerable populations. So our populations are getting older. There's more immunocompromised people. There's more people with cancer. There's more people that are having, transplants. All of those things combined mean that the pathogens that we currently have are probably going to change and evolve over time. And I've put social media and instant reporting on there just as a reminder to everyone who works in business that, everyone is a reporter today. So all of us in here are actually reporters because we all have, most of us have Facebook, Instagram, all of that access to social media. If you have a food that you love, you usually post or write something good about it, but if you have something bad, you're probably statistically going to tell 10 more people about that bad experience than something good. So if you're working in business, just be aware that all of your consumers and customers out there have a voice, and they will use it, and they're much more likely to use it when something goes wrong than when something goes right for them. So never underestimate the power of social media to make or break your product. And my last slide I deliberately left blank because I don't have the magic bullet, but all of those things that we've just talked about in terms of having a robust food safety system, especially your HACCP plan, will certainly go a long way, but certainly education, training, and you know, we're in a training facility today, and some of the people that I audit have been through, you know, the training facilities provided at TAFE, and they're some of the better people that I audit. We've got some of them here today. So I encourage you to, you know, if there is an opportunity for training and developing staff, take it, because you know, knowledge is power, and whilst employees can be your greatest asset, they can be your greatest liability too. And as I mentioned, with all those food product recalls and withdrawals, people were the issue there, not necessarily, you know, the product. The product was innocent. It was the people involved in that process that caused those issues. So I'll leave that with you, and yeah, I look forward to seeing all of you improve over time, because I think that's the goal. We always have to keep getting better and lifting the bar higher. Thank you.